Hey, everybody, welcome back to another wonderful, exciting episode of Open for Business. And today I've got something a little bit different. I met this gentleman. I was over at Caffeine Addicts in Ringgold, and had some meetings over there. And then it was the funniest thing. We started talking about beards before anything, which was kind of cool. And you know what? He's a great guy. I'm bringing on Lee French. He is out of Ringgold. And so this is different for us, which is kind of nice. I think we all should get out of our comfort zone. Now, Lee is a church planter, which is absolutely phenomenal. It kind of, as a kid, that's what my dad did. And my dad did a lot of things, but that's the one thing that he did that he's proud of. I think the other stuff he did is pretty dang good too. But Lee, how are you doing, buddy? And welcome to the show.
Yeah, so I came from Birmingham, Alabama before I was in Northwest Georgia. And if you know anything about Birmingham, Alabama, it is preppy. So my wife, she has a nose ring, she has tattoos, and when we were looking at places to plant, we came up here. I went into a coffee shop and I saw tattoos everywhere. I said, Mary Brooke, we have found your people. This is your flock of people. And so we are loving it. We are, I say 100% hippie. I like to be barefoot, walk around in flip-flops, shorts. I'm a pretty easygoing guy, and Northwest Georgia has been wonderful. I absolutely love it.
Well, I'm glad. It's some people call it serendipity. Some people call it luck. I think everything happens for a reason. I think God puts us where we're supposed to be, when we're supposed to be. And it's kind of funny. I was coming out of a meeting, and sure enough, we started talking about beards. Maybe one day, man, Lee, one day, baby, you can have one of these too. I'm just not sure how your flock's going to take it. I'm just saying, because you are a pastor, correct?
That is correct. Yes, sir. I am a pastor. And before this, I was doing youth ministry. So part of what I'm doing now is I'm doing a church planting residency. So I'm going to plant a church next year. But the short of it is doing youth ministry. There's some things that I'm never asked to do, or I was never asked to do. So I was asked to make silly games like plunger ball and do all sorts of things like that. But counseling a woman one-on-one is something I never did until 2 weeks ago. So the residency set up so that I can have an experience doing things and not putting me straight from youth ministry into running a church.
Right.
As I think is very wise.
Yeah, so in my 60 years of walking this planet, in as many churches I've been to, I've always seen that the youth pastors eventually work their way up to a assistant pastor, and then they go into be a head pastor. But I've always said, if you can deal with teenagers and adolescents, you can do anything. And I tell you, I have seen those pastors that came in as pastors out of seminary, or they just came in, and it was their mentality. And I'm not saying that they don't get it, but I just don't think they get it. And then a youth pastor coming in, it's a whole different ballgame, because you're dealing with hormonal teenagers, preteens, some of the younger ones. And it's like, I have no hair, so I can't say I'd be pulling my hair out. So, and I understand, I had kids and I've got grandbabies, and I know herding them and doing all that stuff as, when they were younger, it's a lot of work. So, God bless you. I think you're been a little bit touched, but that's okay. That's the way we gotta be,
So John, let me tell you something. I've always wanted to go. I don't think anyone should go straight from seminary into pastoral ministry as far as being a senior pastor, because there are certain things that you will deal with in youth ministry in particular that you just don't have scenarios for in the real world. So I will keep it PG, but I'll give you an example of my second week on the job. Okay. So we would go. So the area I was in Birmingham, John, it was the wealthiest suburb in Alabama, so preppy. So we would take our kids to Colorado to camp every year. And so I think we're trying to kill some time before we get to the airport. And I think, what is the most innocent thing that we can buy? A donut. And who doesn't love a good donut? Do you like a good donut, John?
I love donuts.
Well, we're driving around. It's one of those places downtown where I can't really park because I'm in a 12-passenger van. And John,
Oh,
they come out and I asked them to give me a unique donut, and they did. Okay, so it can hold half a dozen donuts in this box, and
oh
I
my
come out
gosh.
and I open it up. They have the cameras on me. I should have known something it up, and it was the male anatomy in donut form.
Oh my. Yes, I've heard about stuff like that. I'm just saying.
And yep, and then my third week on the job, I had to have a conversation about that donut. So I think people in seminary, you can learn how to be a real person doing youth ministry, believe it or not. You
I
can learn how to deal with odd things, unique circumstances in a low stress environment.
Oh, okay. So I'm going to ask you the ultimate question to start us all off here. So where did you grow up, and what pushed you into the being a church leader?
Yeah, I grew up, I'm Lee French, and I'm from Harris, Tennessee. So
Okay.
it's the middle of nowhere. It borders Kentucky. And when I grew up, when I was 5 years old, one of the questions I like to ask people is, what did you want to do when you were five? Because John, I thought I was going to be a paleontologist. And if I
Oh,
wasn't in the industry today, I
Dino
think I'd be
hunter.
somewhere. Yeah, I think I'd be somewhere digging up dinosaur bones. I'm fascinated by it. I had a Jeep Patriot for a while, and I put the Jurassic Park stickers on it. I'm a
Oh,
huge
my, oh,
dinosaur
my.
fan. Yeah, but church ministry isn't anything that I wanted to do, and I say that not out of pride. I say that out of arrogance. And so in our denomination, the language we will use is there's an internal calling and an external calling. So what do you feel versus what people say about you? Well, my last pre-ministry dream job was just so obscure, John. I wanted to be an aerospace physiologist. And when I say I wanted to do that, I interviewed for a week with the Navy to try to become an aerospace physiologist.
Wow.
And yeah, I know. And the short of it, the job, it sounds fancier than it is. When you're up in the sky, the G forces, everything, you're the person who explains what's happening. Well, I had a professor in grad school who worked with NASA, and I thought that's the job that I want to have. I eventually want to work for NASA someday. To get that experience, I had to start with either the Air Force or the Navy. So they're the ones who explain what is happening in low gravity, high gravity, all those sorts of things, and what is happening to your body. And so before I went on an airplane, this is where God's providence comes into place, where he puts everything into place, is I was going for an interview on a Sunday, and I'm happy little Lee. I say Lee ironically. I'm 6'5". You've met me,
Yeah,
but
you
I had
big boy.
my yeah, I had my airplane ticket. I brought it to the counter. I said, "Okay, I'm ready for my flight." I was 3 hours early, and they said, "Sir, your flight's not ready yet." Then I did it again. And then the third time, they said, "Sir, the U.S. government did not pay for your ticket." I thought, "Oh my goodness, maybe God wants to see how bad I want this." So stubborn Lee flew out the next day. And if this doesn't sum me up in a nutshell, I don't know what does. So I'm overconfident. I am loud. I'm boisterous at times. And the U.S. Navy has sent us an email about a presentation. And in this presentation, they gave us an example of what someone had done in the past. And I emailed them back and I said, when I do my presentation, do you want to see this format or a different format? And they said, Mr. French, it is your presentation. Do with it as you wish. So I did. And guess what? Everyone else did the other presentation, and I did my own version of it. And the Navy hated it.
Oh
They wanted
my.
something uniform. Yep.
Right.
But they did ask me back, and they said if they invited me back, then I would get the job. But I enrolled in seminary shortly after because my wife, right before I left, she said, you should consider ministry. And I thought, okay, maybe I should.
That's excellent. Yeah, yeah. The
Yeah.
military doesn't want out of the box thinkers in any way, shape, or form. They want you to toe that line, and yeah. So it's as a military brat, I know it's one of those things where you're like, oh, you can't do that, and in my I don't. No, you can't do that. You got to do what they tell you to do. I'm like, oh, Okay, I get it. All right. So,
Yeah, creativity is not accepted in the Navy. They want you to fit in their box,
that is
and I'm
correct.
so large, I just can't fit in any box.
I was gonna say, no, you kind of, I don't, I mean, I have a bunch of friends that are Marine. You're a little more Marine, or you're actually our Army. So, because you a big dude, and they like those big dudes. Those big dudes are good for them. So,
That's right.
so, I mean, so you grew up, went to seminary, then did you go right to Alabama, and then and do work there?
Yeah, so I was actually in Virginia Beach for a little bit, not because of the military, but I think there's something special about praying out in the woods. And when I
Yes,
was trying to discern what God wanted next for me, that's where my 70% hippie comes in. I
gotcha.
saw that Jesus went out in the woods and prayed, and I said, all right, I'm going to do it. And so in grad school, I met my wife at App State. I got my master's so I could hopefully go into aerospace physiology someday.
Right.
But I asked for a wife, asked for some things, and then eventually God answered my prayers. And when He answered my prayers, it brought me to the opposite side of the country. I was planning on going to Arizona,
Oh.
and I ended up in Virginia,
Mm.
completely opposite side of the country. And so when I was there, I had a few unique jobs. My last pre-ministry title was Community Outreach Specialist and STEM presenter for East Coast Polytechnical Institute,
Oh,
which was
okay.
a big title to say we're not paying you as much as we should. That's
Correct.
what that title
Yep.
meant. But when I was in Virginia, that's when my calling to ministry really happened, and everyone started pouring into me. Well, the short of it is my dad had pancreatic cancer when I was 15 or 16 years old. And then it came back 10 years later. It came
Oh.
back with a vengeance. And it was at that moment where I felt God telling me that I've been doing everything halfway. So I was working at ECPI, but I was doing seminary too. And God was telling me that I needed to be close to my mother. I needed to do ministry full time. So that I went to Knoxville after that. And then in Knoxville, I was doing a ministry internship. I was there for 2 years. That's the only time I was required to be there. And then I went to Birmingham. And Birmingham is a different animal in a lot of ways. You have a lot of
Mm-hmm.
white people, nice people, country club people. I might fit two of those three categories, but me and golf, we don't exactly fit together.
Uh-uh. Yeah.
And then after that, so I was trying to discern what God wanted for me next. And so what did I do? I went to the woods and I prayed. And I had some unique ministry opportunities, John. I thought me and my wife at one time wanted to be missionaries. And so there was this opportunity that came up in New Zealand. So we prayed about that. And we prayed about college ministry, and we prayed about being a senior pastor. And then I prayed a prayer on October 29th. I said, God, you want me to do these things or something else? And then on Halloween of 2024, I had a friend text me that said, you should consider church planting, and you should consider church planting in Nashville. It's like, okay.
Oh, wow.
And so
Nashville.
I
All
went.
right.
Yeah, I went. I talked to him. I'd lived in Nashville for one summer because my sister lives there. And then when I started talking to them and figuring, I don't like Nashville. I
Nope.
like to visit Nashville. I would love to visit Nashville, but to live there day after day, it just seemed like a drag to me.
Mm.
Well, in that period of time, I started asking close friends, like, what do you think? This church planting thing came up, and they said, Lee, you're ADHD out the wazoo. This fits your personality. You
Yep,
like to
it does.
build things.
Yeah.
You don't like the structure. You don't like all of those things. And then someone said Tennessee Valley. I said, what did you say?
Yeah.
They said, there's a church planting network in Tennessee Valley. We had just realized that we were going to have another boy, and we were going to name him Boone. So we love Appalachia. And when
Mm-hmm.
this opportunity came up, we came and we visited. And the first time we liked it, John, but the second time we loved it.
Yep.
And I couldn't see myself anywhere else.
It's a beautiful area. My dad's side of the family is all from the Tunnel Hill, Ringgold, Alton area. So, and then my mother's side is all from the Ozarks. So I guess I'm a double hillbilly, if you want to call me that. But yeah, it's same thing. I brought my wife up here a couple of times, and by the last time we were here, even my own son said, "Why can't we live here? We should live here. We should find out." And it's like, okay. My dad not doing so well, but that's not this is my story, not yours. So as a preacher's kid and as a son of and he did evangelism, stuff like that. And they didn't call him a planter. He's a church starter. He started churches, stayed there for a couple of years. Then they brought in a full-time pastor, and then he moved to the next location. So I know it's different now. Can you tell me the difference between now and, say, I don't know, 10, 15 years ago?
Yeah, there's an article that came out on the Gospel Coalition recently that talks about this new resurgence of church planting. And so back around 2008 to 2015, they would take someone straight from youth pastor and they would put them in a senior pastor role. So you get anatomy donuts, and then you're dealing with real people, completely, completely different experiences. And what they had done unintentionally was there were a few strong churches, a man named Mark Driscoll, and he was a pretty brash individual. So he was telling people to be bold in their faith. And there was a couple guys like Tim Keller. He had just planted this church in New York that was doing well, and John Piper, and then all these titans. Well, not everyone is as gifted as those individuals. And so what they were encouraging people to do was to just go to a city, bring out your Bible, don't have a support network, and then try to figure things out. And how do you think that went, John?
Not well. Not well. Not well.
Yeah, it didn't go well at all.
Yeah.
And when it didn't go well, they were burning people out left and right. And what they realized through that process is there are a few exceptional individuals that can go and they can plant a church in a big city and they can make everything okay. They have great infrastructure, great programs, all of those things. But for most people like myself, we need a network. And that's what the article was saying, is that the churches that have been successful recently, most of them have been planted since 2000. And a lot of them out of a network where they have people supporting me and making sure that I am okay as an individual. Because in my denomination, we like to really emphasize the competency of the individual, but scripture, we care way more about character than how much you know. Almost 100% of the time. There are a few things mentioned about teaching, but God cares about the character of the individual more. And so you would get these gifted guys back then who would just go into these areas and they would have a moral failure because they had no one checking in.
Right.
So I have people left and right that are saying hard things to me, that I can be a bit too brash. I can be a bit too loud, that my words have consequences. And then they're making sure that my marriage is healthy. They're sending me on a marriage retreat and all of these things. They're making sure that the planter is healthy because you're not going to be able to plant a church that is sick. If the person who is supposed to be the physician of the soul is operating out of a place of sinfulness or immorality or just lack of support, then the church itself is not going to be healthy.
Right.
And so recently, 2021 is when they were able to say that things shifted drastically, that we had this latency period in church planting where people weren't doing it because everyone that you heard that said they were a church planter, they're like, don't do it. Your wife's going to leave you. You're going to get burned out. You're going to be working 8 hours a week. Just go away from church planting. And so they realized that we had been burning young men out left and right. And so we are making healthier church planters, making sure that I'm equipped, that I've counseled a female one-on-one before I ever enter into full-time, strictly pulpit ministry.
Right.
And because of that, churches have been healthier since that time period.
Back in the, I'm old, so I've seen it happen, is typically the back when I was watching people doing church planting, it was always because of a bad split in the church. And that pastor was like, "Oh, I'm planting churches now." Well, kind of not, because you're taking a torn church, and I'm telling you, 90% of the time, if not higher, neither church survived that. Because it was just it was a bad atmosphere, and yeah. So when people look at you, what do you want people to see? When I look at Lee, what do you like?
Jesus, obviously.
Well, there you go. So yeah. So if I look at Lee, well, first I'm looking at Lee going, this handsome dude sitting in here in a coffee bar and asking me about my beard. I don't know. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just teasing. But yeah, I mean, we always wonder what people from the outside look at us and go, hey, that's a good guy, or, good for him, or, ultimately, I know you want them to see Jesus, but what else do you want them to see about you?
Yeah, that's a wonderful question. And depending on what area of the country you are in, Christianity can feel like a burden. And when Jesus comes and he talks to people, he says that he wants to make our yoke lighter. He doesn't want to put a heavy burden on us. So the Christianity that I grew up with, there was an old man in the sky, and he was ready to zap you with a lightning bolt. But Jesus came to die for your sins, so that was okay. But it was a Christianity that was a complete oxymoron. In Luke, when we're told about the birth of Christ, after the angel says, do not be afraid, it says that Jesus is coming to bring us joy. And it doesn't matter what our circumstances are. We see Paul, who's in prison, who's been stoned, and all of these things, and the disciples early on, and Jesus himself, that we are to be people who have joy. So I want people to see the Jesus that I didn't see growing up. I want people to see that Christianity is a way to have a joyful life that doesn't depend on what's in your bank account, how healthy you are, how well that you think your family is doing. Our joy should come in our salvation, not in our success. And that's what I want people to see. The Tim Keller is a guy that I mentioned before, and he's someone who really sticks out to me. And he had received a diagnosis of pancreatic cancer, and they were interviewing him. And what he said, John, was profound. They asked him about if he was mad at God, and this is what he said. This is how you can tell someone has true faith. He said, I would never go back to my prayer life pre-cancer. Why?
Wow.
Because he had experienced that joy. Yeah. And it wasn't hyperbole. He's not known to be sarcastic anyway. He ended up passing away. But that's how you can tell if someone really loves Jesus or if they're just trying to avoid the wrath of God.
Yeah. And that right there is a huge difference. I mean, we had a good conversation there just when I first met you about, my beliefs and how I've seen things. And you're right. I mean, it's like, I had told a guy the other day, I'm going to go back and try church. And he goes, oh, the old 3 up, 3 down, pass the plate, get yelled at, and then go home and eat, right? And I'm like, no, it's not always like that. It's, some churches, I'm going to say that's you can't get it more on spot, saying it's 3 up, 3 down, pass the plate, get yelled at, go home and go, well, I know what I did wrong the rest of the week. Now I'm really good now, I guess. But I do love the churches. The newer churches seem to be a little more chill, and and it's kind of an opening thing. I have been to those churches where you walk in, and heaven forbid you sit in Aunt Martha's or Sister Martha's chair, because you will get it. So you put a question in here. We only got a couple minutes left, and I love this question. Ready? So you put in there. If I could give truth serum to one person for one question, what would you ask and who would you ask? So I'm going to let you go first, and then I'll put it. But who would you do that to?
Okay, so I'll start out by saying the best answer I've ever heard is my wife, and her mom is quite put together, and she has no hint of any sort of wrongdoing in the past. And my wife said, I'll give her truth serum and ask about her college stories.
Oh, no. Well, see, I would have asked my dad about what he did in the military, because he was a Vietnam War guy and he was a staff sergeant, but he just passed a couple weeks ago. But he would never talk about what he did. And I know it's kind of rough on him to do that, but I still wanted to know, because you hear horror stories, and then you actually hear some stories that are actually pretty mind blowing. So yeah.
For me, I'm a competitive person, and I have a little bit of the sin of pride in me, but I would put me and my sister in a room.
Oh no.
With my mom, and I would ask my mom who the favorite is, because I am confident it would be me.
You are asking for trouble on that one. Oh my Lord. You're both my favorite. What's wrong with you? You can't ask questions like that.
She wouldn't say that. It is 100% me, John.
So, okay, when this gets going, what's the best way to reach out to you?
Yeah, my phone number should be included somewhere on here.
It is.
I'm going to be in the community. I work at Caffeine Addicts on Thursdays. Could be in the morning, could be in the afternoon. But I'm a grassroots person. I'd much rather meet people in person. I want our church to be outward facing. So if you're looking for me, hopefully I'm outside. I don't want to be a church that only focuses inside. We want to be a church that focuses outward, to bring people in, to help the poor, just like Jesus did.
There you go. Yep, that's a great thing, and I love that philosophy. I think you and I were talking about, I think your benevolent fund should be bigger than your building fund. That's my personal thing. Lee, thanks for being on today. We do really appreciate it. Everybody, we'll keep everybody up to date on what he's doing, where the church is going to be. I'm hoping he's going to be out in the woods now that you keep saying the woods, because I'm all about the woods. Everybody, thanks for watching Open for Business today. We'll see everybody next week on Open for Business.